Have you ever needed an easier way for employees to enter expenses? In today's video, we're going to walk through vibe coding an expense ledger transaction entry form that will populate the data in Google Sheets. So let's go ahead and put a quick thing here. I'm going to have this in the description below. I'm going to walk through this real quick. So this is just the general idea: Google Apps Script web app, project bound to Google Sheet. And then project details. Again, I'm giving a little bit of extra detail up top using Bootstrap, which is just a framework for how it looks. It's called CSS. And then just gonna use dark night mode theme and then pull drop down options. So I have those set up here. So I have employees and categories that we're going to use to populate these two drop downs. And then I explain what columns we have. And so you can adjust this as you need if you have more columns or less that you want to use. And so here, date entered, the employee that entered the data. And so again, optionally, you don't need these and you just need the other ones. But then as we go through, transaction date, display in a user-friendly format, and a category dropdown, transaction amount, currency, description, and text field. So that is all the columns here. So I'm giving a quick description of what they do. And then for C to F, so transaction date through description, we want those to display in a table format so they can enter more than one transaction at a time. And then finally, we want it to save those form submissions back to this tab. So let's go ahead and throw this in here and let that start working. And we're going to go over here and create our app script. And once this populates, we can go ahead and name this. And so it doesn't really matter. You could even leave it as untitled, but we're just going to call this expense ledger web app. And then we're going to create a new file here for HTML. And I'm going to call this index. We'll see if that's the right one or not, but we have code.js and index.html. So it's still working here. So I'm going to explain my editor is dark here because I'm using something called Black App Script, which is a Chrome extension. And so you can look in the Chrome Web Store to find this if you would like to use it on your own project. And what that allows me to do is to edit how this looks and change the theme as well. So I'm just going to leave it alone for the moment. And we'll see if ChatGPT is done. And it looks like it's giving us the results now. And so let me go ahead and clear out our existing here real quick, just so we're ready to go, and hit save. And then, well, it's finishing up here. Let me show you what we're going to need to do. So we're going to have to deploy this so we have a link to use. And so we'll start with a new deployment. And then once you do that, you're going to have a link. And then after that, we'll just want to do manage deployment. So I'll walk through that once we have some code in here. But that's what we're going to have to do. And so with this, every time you make a change, you're going to have to update the deployment. And so again, that'll make more sense here in a second once we have this in here. So let's go ahead and get our data in here. So this is the code.js, which is right here. So we'll paste that in. And then now we'll go to our index.html. So scroll down. And then here's our HTML file. So make sure this matches exactly to this, and if we need to, we can rename. So if you notice when I named it, it doesn't have the .html. You just name it the first part, and it adds HTML automatically because we created HTML here. All right, so let's paste that HTML in there and save. And now at this point, we can go ahead and deploy. So if we go to deploy and new deployment, and again, this is only required the first time. After that, you're going to do manage. So the first time, we're going to go to this gear icon and click web app. And then here we have some different options. And so you can add a description. So this is optional, but you can use this to track versions and stuff like that. And then who we want to execute as. And so usually it's going to be execute as me, but you can do user accessing the web app, especially if you have something like a Google domain where you have multiple users on your workspace account or something like that. And at that point, you can also restrict who has access. And so if you have workspace, you'll have that option there. So anyone on your workspace, and then you can determine if you want to run as you or not. And so the difference is, do they have access to this Google Sheet as an example? Because if they don't, they're not going to be able to write to it. But if you do it as me, then you don't have to give them access to the Google Sheet and they can still submit entries to it. So it's just a unique way to do that. So who has access, however, we need to make sure that they'll be able to access the web app. So if you only want yourself, then you can do that. You can do anyone Google account or anyone. And again, you can do anyone in your workspace. But we're going to do anyone, and this just allows anyone to use that and submit entries to that. Next, we need to authorize access. So let's go ahead and do that. And once we get to this point, this is just Google's legal disclaimer because they did not develop this, and so they don't want to be accountable for it. And so obviously if you're doing the coding, then this will be good to go. So we'll click advanced and then go to expense ledger web app, which is the name of the project. And this tells you what it needs access to, and it just needs access to this Google Sheet so it can register those entries. So click allow, and then we're going to get our deployment error. So this is our web app URL, and so this is what you would share. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and then there's the basics showing up right now. And then what we'll do is if you make any changes to this file, you're going to have to redeploy so that those changes become live. So in other words, if I change this title a little bit, it's not going to display on here until I update the deployment. And so if you do new deployment, it's going to change that URL. So you don't normally want to do that. Normally you want to go to manage deployment, and then we go to edit, this pencil icon, and then we pick a new version. Optionally, we can add a description to tell what we did or changed in that, and then you click deploy, and that would then update and push any changes you just made to that same URL. Now, for the purposes of testing, we're going to use test deployment, and the reason is because test deployment, it works automatically with updated code as soon as you click save in the script editor. So it just makes it easier when you're iterating, but then when you're done, make sure you do update the deployment here, and then people accessing using your normal link will be able to see what you just did. So here's our dev link. So you can see that /dev there. And now if we look, you can see our employees here. So I want to change this to white. It's a little hard to see right now. Other than that, we could change some of this here in a minute. Like this looks kind of blah. And so let's just go ahead and pick Angela, for example, and let's just say she's making an entry for advertising, and we could put in $150, and this could be ad spend, something like that. And let's just see real quick. Okay, let's add another row, so that's good. So let's just see if submitting works. Say one expense, and there we go. Let's go over and look, and sure enough, there it came through. So you can see pretty quickly we have a working web app, and so now at this point we can just decide how much we want to finesse and mess with this to make it exactly what we want. So if we come down here, we can ask what we want to do. So we can say this design is pretty blah. Can we make this look nicer? Also, the employee text top is hard to see. Make it white. And then finally, let's add a expense transaction entry header at the top of the form. Let's see what that comes back with, but functionally we are working already. And so we came back with date entered, which is today when I'm recording this. And those, so functional corporate intranet 2013. Well, I'm not quite sure if night mode is a big deal back then, but so drop-in replacement for index HTML. So as we go through this, one of the things to note, I don't think we have any errors, but I'm going to show you real quick. You may have a browser error. So there's kind of two different places that error is going to happen. And one is basically in this side, for example, the code.js, where it's accessing this part. And the other part is on the browser side. And so the way you check the browser side, right click, inspect, go to console, and then over here, we have these kind of orange warning triangles, and those aren't something you need to worry about. It's just kind of a generic error. But then once you get down to here, this is where you're going to look to see if you have another error. And if so, you can just copy and paste that into ChatGPT, whatever you're using, to get help with that error. So we don't have any there, so we should be good to go. And then as we go, you want to make sure that you're watching what it says here, because it might give you just part of the code. And so you can force it and you just tell it, hey, please only give me the full file. And then you don't have to worry about it. But sometimes what will happen is it'll give you part of it. So for example, it might just give you one function or something like that. But this tells us drop-in replacement, so it should be the whole thing. So if we go to index.html and then make sure this is done, we don't want to copy it mid typing out, whatever you want to call it there, generating. So make sure that's done. And then let's Control A to select all, delete, and then paste and save. So again, we just made a change. So if we went to our main deployment, we're not going to see that change. But our test deployment, if we hit refresh, we will. So when you're iterating, you can kind of go back and forth between these two, but then when you're done, make sure to manage and update your regular deployment, so that way it's working for everyone using your form. And whew, that changed it a little bit. I'm not fully sure I love that, but it definitely is more dynamic. So let's look at here. Again, same thing. Looks like this is all working. Let's say 500. Actually, let's change this to maybe GIFs, or do user entertainment. We'll call this birthday party. And then hit submit, and let's see if this does anything. So it's kind of weird because you can't really tell that anything happened. So looks like it did now. But it's kind of weird because nothing's happening when I hit submit. So we could adjust this more. I'm just gonna leave this because I think this looks pretty slick. I mean, I have a little mixed feelings on this icon, but it's pretty cool what it came up with. So I'm just going to leave the format for now. I think we'll call it good. But I want to update this, that way it's more obvious when I click submit that something's happening. So great. And we make an adjustment. So when we click the submit button, it grays out and we see some sort progress indicator, dinner or something, while we're waiting. And we'll see what happens there. And then I think that'd be good for today. We were able to do this pretty quickly. And so this is one of the reasons for me why vibe coding is such a big deal, because simple applications like this are now super easy for basically anyone to come in and just throw a couple things in here, and then boom, you have something slick. And you could even add, you know, your image for your company at the top, and you could just say, hey, I want to add the image for my company. Here's the URL, and update it just like that. So it's pretty slick how you can do things like that and make that work. So once this finishes updating, we'll drop this in and see how that works. So let's see what it tells us. Drop in replacement again. So submit button that disables and grays out. Spin inside the button, and button returns normal. All right. So this changed back to that, so we should be good. So we could copy code. Scroll down the bottom, make sure there's anything else there. Nope. Looks like we're all good. So index.html, Control all, and paste again. And then let's check one more time. All right, let's try somebody else this time. Try Kevin, and then we'll pick this day, category payroll, and we'll just call this white commission, and click submit, and that looks way better. There it showed up. Perfect. All right, so that's it for today's video on how to vibe code an expense ledger web app using ChatGPT, Google Sheets, and Google Apps Script. Make sure to check out the other videos on my channel for more tutorials on both Google Sheets, AppScript, and vibe coding. And as always, have a great day.